Why have we come to earth? Do you remember? Why have we taken birth? Do you remember?
There's a green light. Now I'm even more on. Okay, sorry about that. Looking at the four agreements, and as a good basis is a good groundwork for life. And I was going to say, when I used to be a hardcore cyclist, I go back to every winter on the off season to look at my bike, to look at my position on the bike, my riding posture, and everything. I'd go back to the basics of just what it meant to have a bicycle that was in shape and to ride a bike, because it would set me up for the rest of the season. I could trust that I was back on target again. And so I like to go back once in a while to something that's a basic, something that's a core, how to do it. Sometimes in some religious science churches we go back to the first 4 chapters of the Science of Mind textbook in January. And so I wanted to go back to the 4 agreements and to take a look at that as it pertains to our lives, because even though we know this, have you noticed that if you're like me, you sometimes get off of living in alignment with that stuff? So it's good to kind of get a little reminder. And so I'm dividing this up actually into 2 talks. We're going to do the first agreement here at the first service, and then at the second service, we're actually going to do the chapter before that, which is his first chapter on the domestication, as he calls it, of the human race. And so, which is many people say is one of the most eye-opening chapters they've ever read anywhere, kind of a real wake-up. So if you want to stick around, you'll get a completely different talk in the second service, or you can watch it on the video later on. So the 4 agreements are a code to live more consciously, by which to live more consciously. And they're a reminder, they're really a reminder of what we already know, but oftentimes forget or have been conditioned out of not applying. And so today we're going to look at the first agreement, which he says is the most important agreement. If we get this one, just this one, everything else falls in place. Okay? So that's an alarm bell for me. It's like, okay, pay attention. You know, I can doze during the next 3. I'm not even going to be here next week for don't take it personally. I'm going to let Reverend Sue, do the don't take it personally, because I don't want to touch that subject with I might have a little problem with living up to that subject. So I'm going to let her do it. She laughs. It's like, oh, good. So I get to do don't take it personally. And I said, yeah. But I'll be up in Eugene speaking at a convention up there next weekend, or this coming weekend. So, but this is the most important. Be impeccable with your word is the first agreement. Be impeccable with your word. And our word is the power that we have to create. You know, in the Gospels, we read about in the beginning was the Word. The power of the Word to create. Ernest Holmes talks all the time about the power of the Word. It's our power to create. And the Word itself is a force. Our Word is a force. It's a force in our life. And we create through our Word. Through our Word, we manifest everything in our lives. And I like that word that he uses, through. Everything begins with a thought or an idea or an image in the mind, okay? And people often, when they get into religious science, say, well, if every thought is creative, how come certain of my thoughts don't create. Okay? And the answer is because A, you don't put it into word form, and B, you don't emphasize it or give it the energy. You know, I have a whim. There's a difference between a whim, you know, wouldn't it be nice if, and something that I really want to create. And I put my word and my passion, my power behind. There's a difference. And so the word is the part through which the thought or the image begins to flow into manifestation. When we take the time to form it into word, when we take the time to start speaking it, whether it's internally to ourselves or externally to others, it begins to take form. Okay? So everything that you see, everything that is, was at one point in time a thought. The chair you're sitting on was a thought in somebody's mind at one point in time. This building was a thought in somebody's mind at one point in time. And eventually it was given voice, and then it was given form and shows up. So the word is the power with which we create. And we can use this word to create heaven, or we can use this word to create hell. We can use our word to create freedom. We can use our word to create slavery, both for ourselves and for other people. We plant our word in fertile soil. Our mind is fertile soil. We plant our word in that fertile soil, and it grows. And we're going to talk later about the conditioning of that soil. But we plant it into the fertile soil, and it grows. And so what are the words we're planting in that soil? Are we just popping out opinions, boom, 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 without even thinking about them? Or do we think about what we're actually saying? Do we think carefully about what we're saying? Not just to other people, but more so to ourselves. What am I saying? What am I saying on a regular, daily, moment-by-moment basis to and about myself? Some of the words that may have been planted in our own minds are things like, you're ugly, you're stupid, you're not very good at such and such. And these words have a tendency, once we get them in there, we do something that resonates with the words and it reinforces them, right? So I remember when I was a kid, coming home one day, and for some reason somebody had said something about my appearance. And so I came home and I said, Mom, am I good looking? And she goes, well, honey, you're smart. Okay, got it. Not good looking, right? And so I went through most of my 20s, clear into that. I look back at pictures of myself now in my 20s. I was a pretty handsome dude. But did I know that at that time? I remember one time I was driving some people around. At one point in my career, I drove limousines. And I was driving these two women who were turning 40. The one was turning 40. It was her birthday. And they had grown up together, and the birthday girl's mom. And they were sitting there looking through pictures of themselves back in high school. And they said, God, we were really cute back then. And we didn't even know it. We were so worried about the little bit of extra fat we had and this and the pimple or whatever, and we didn't even know it. And the mom, who was about 60, says, and you still are, and you still don't know it. And you'll appreciate it more 20 years down the road. So do we know that? Can we allow ourselves to feel that? What was interesting was, so when I'm about 40, 41 years old, I answered a personal ad looking for a relationship. The only personal ad I've ever answered in my whole life, and you'll understand why in a minute. And most of the personal ads I saw in the paper, this is up in Seattle, were about, I look like this, I do this, you must look like this, and you must make this much money or do this, okay? I didn't want to mess with any of that stuff. But this one said, I belong to a 12-step program and have for a number of years. I do Tai Chi, I meditate, and I'm looking for somebody who's a spiritual partner to do the same. And I thought, that's different, and that's somebody I'd like to get to know. So we had a few phone calls and stuff like that. Things went good, and so we agreed to go meet. And I met her at a Thai restaurant, I still remember. And the minute I walked in, she took one look at me, and her face fell, and her whole body dropped. And of course, what came back to me? You're not good looking. You're ugly. And you're a disappointment. And immediately after that, I went out and grew a nice big full-face beard, which is a nice way to hide your face when you're not feeling really good looking, So for some people, I'm not saying everybody who has a beard does that, but that was what I was doing, and I was very conscious of it. And so those seeds that we plant, and those seeds that even get planted early continue to ripple and ripple and ripple, and whenever we encounter something that triggers them off or has the potential to trigger them off, we still play with those, and those are our word that we're working with. So what is it that we're planting in our ground? What is it that we're planting in the fertile soil of our mind? And if we're parents, what is it that we're planting in the soil of our children's minds? What are those words? And so to pay attention. The way that Don Miguel Ruiz describes the word impeccable, when I first heard that agreement, I thought be impeccable means keep your word. But he says, no, not exactly. The definition of impeccable is to be without sin. Without sin. And sin is anything you do which goes against your true self. Sin is that which we do which goes against our true nature, our true self, our God self. So sin, in any religion, in any teaching, sin is that which keeps us separate from God, right? Okay? And so because we also remember that we are one with God, anything that keeps us separate from that aspect of ourselves that is the true nature of ourselves, our true God self, is a sin. Not as in you're going to go to hell with fire and damnation, but you're going to live in hell because of the way that you're talking to yourself. Does that make sense? Okay? So that's the sin. Impeccable is being without sin. Judging or blaming is sin. When we judge others, when we judge ourselves, when we blame others, when we blame ourselves, we're living in sin. When I'm impeccable, I take responsibility for my actions. Now, there's a difference between I take responsibility and I judge and blame myself and criticize and tear down myself. See, if I do something that's out of alignment with my values and I realize I've got to go make an apology and perhaps make an amends and perhaps clean something up, that's just, okay, I've lived outside of that, I need to go do this. If I sit there and go, oh God, that just proves how stupid I am or how, whatever I am, that's, what I like to call taking out the hammer and beating ourselves up with it, And so it's a hammerless society. Impeccable is no hammers, okay? No self-hammering. I don't judge or blame, but I do take responsibility for my actions. I live in alignment with my word. I live in alignment with a word that is lifting me and everybody else up energetically. Self-rejection is a separation from my God self. When I reject myself in any way, shape, or form, my true self, I'm rejecting God. Because I am God in form. That's the truth of who I am. I may forget, and I may then wake up and remember, but I still am God in form. Always have been, always will be, am right now. I am, you are, all of us are. We're all that. And so as we reject ourselves, we separate ourselves from our God self, and it's the greatest sin that we can do, is to separate ourselves from our God self. In the church that I grew up in, it was called a mortal sin, and mortal literally means it will kill you. And so it will kill our connection to our high self. It will kill our connection to our wisdom self because we will no longer go there because we're so wrapped up in the agreement we've made to be something other than the truth of who we are. Okay? Impeccability, on the other hand, leads to life. So self-judgment, self-criticism, self-rejection leads to death. Impeccability leads to life. The core of what he says, the core of where we get out of alignment with the dream, we'll talk about this in the second service, is that we get out of alignment with our own self. And the cure, the antidote for it is self-love. Do I love myself? Do I love myself enough that I can love myself even while I'm making mistakes? And be careful of whose idea a mistake is. Because something that we call mistake is oftentimes just God's process working through us. A friend of mine used to say there are no throwaway lines in God. And Ricky Byers has a wonderful song that says there's no mistakes in God. If I use my word on you, use my word on you is the same as using it on me. So if I call you stupid or ugly or blah, 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 guess who else I'm calling that? Because, myself. It's the old, as long as I got a finger pointed out, there's three pointed back at me. Because all of us are one. And then not only do I do that, but then guess what? If I call you whatever it is, you're going to not like me very much because of it. And then I'm going to feel even worse about that. Plus, I'm going to feel some guilt in my core self, in myself that knows better. I'm not going to feel good. So using our word to lift ourselves, using our word to lift others, is being impeccable with our word. Using it to lift the energy to the best that we can do. Being impeccable with my word, I use my energy in the direction of truth and love. Now think about that for a minute. And just with love, think about how you use your words during the day. Both internally and externally. And if you're like me, right now you're kind of sitting there going, you know, I got a little room for improvement here, right? So the difficulty with using our words in the direction of truth and love is that we have, as a culture, pretty much been conditioned to misuse the word. We have, as a culture, been conditioned to lie. I remember when I was young, my little sister and I would every once in a while get caught by having raided the cookie jar. And my mom would always say, "Have you been in the cookie jar?" And I was smart, right? We've already established that. So I would just say yes. My little sister, with crumbs still on her face, would say, "No." And the reason I was smart was because guess who really got punished and guess who didn't? Because she got punished for lying. And then Mom would forget about the fact that I was in the cookie jar too. But we lie to ourselves. Another way that we lie to ourselves is, I didn't really want that. It's okay that I don't have that. Sure, I said I wanted it, and I put a lot of years of desire into it, but it's okay. It doesn't matter. You know, that's another way that we lie to ourselves. We start to tell ourselves the non-truth of ourselves. We blame other people, we blame ourselves. You know, anytime anything goes down, have you noticed in the press, anytime somebody makes a mistake, say in the government or in the corporate world, the first thing we're looking for is, who do we blame? Got to get that person. Got to find out who that is and blame them. We criticize. Make somebody wrong. We get angry. We start looking for revenge. And we do this to others and we do this to ourselves. And that's what we're conditioned to. Our words are lines of energy. If you could see them, they're lines of energy that are moving out constantly. Don Miguel Ruiz calls them spells that we're casting out there, and that the spell continues on and on and on and on. So whatever agreement we make continues to ripple out in all sorts of different ways, sometimes far beyond where we ever thought it would do, wherever we thought it would go. So we make we use these words, we create these lines of energy. And he says the gossip is the worst thing that we can do with our word. Gossip, talking negatively about somebody else, usually about something we know nothing about. Have you seen so-and-so and how they dress? Have you seen so-and-so and what they said? Did you hear about that? Okay, all that negative energy. It's pure poison, and he says it's like a computer virus that completely undoes our own integrity and our own goodwill, our own high self, our own connection with our wisdom self. So take a breath. I know you guys don't do gossip, but you know people who do, and you've noticed it's around in our society, right? If you're ever on Facebook, if you're ever on the news, it's rampant in our society. He says it's our main form of communication in society, and it's gotten so intense that it clogs genuine communication. The lines of gossip have gotten so intense that it clogs our ability to have genuine communication. And then it's made worse by those who just deliberately spread lies. You know, some of the elections that we've had recently, by recently I mean the last 20, 25 years, there are people who go out there and just deliberately spread a lie about another politician, knowing that as soon as they put the lie out there, it's hard to kill off. And it's even harder to kill off now in the internet age with the Facebook and all that stuff. It's out there and it keeps on spreading. We've all seen emails that this virus will take your computer down to its the C drive down to its zero compartment or something like that. It's like your C drive doesn't have a zero compartment. But there's all these, if you don't do this, and if you don't tell all your friends about it, send this email to tell all your friends about it, This is what's going to happen. And that's just gossip. That's just people playing and messing with our minds just for the sheer sake of it. They're basically like computer hackers, but in the conversation of the planet, of the global planet. We misuse, I'm going to shift off that, we misuse our word against ourselves. Some of the ones we hear is, I'm getting old. I'm losing my hair. I got this little bald spot back here, right? My daughter, for the last 20 years, has told me, Daddy, you're going bald. And she finally, a few years ago, admitted that it hasn't grown. It's just always been there. It's just, I just have this little bald spot. Hasn't grown, hasn't gotten any bigger, whatever like that. And it's just like, no, honey, I'm not going bald. I just happen to have a thin spot back there, So we tell ourselves stuff like that. I'll never make that much money again. I'll never have that kind of love again. I'll never have that kind of whatever again. I'm getting fat. One of my favorite, I'm having a senior moment. Which implies both, I'm getting old and I'm losing my mind. What a thing to tell ourselves. By the way, old not in a healthy way, right? I mean, it's okay, we all get old. And there's old with power and grace and dignity and wisdom. Okay? And then there's just old. Falling apart. Yeah. So we use our word against ourselves very subtly. Very subtly. And sometimes we do it just to play around. Most of the time we do it because, why? Everybody else is doing it. This is the collective, this is what I'm going to talk about in the next service, this is the collective dream of the planet. And we agree with it in order to fit in. See, the reason that somebody like a Jesus gets crucified is he doesn't fit in. He doesn't agree with the collective dream of the planet. And says so. And the collective dream of the planet gets ticked off. The same with Buddha. Buddha actually had his cousin try and kill him. And a couple of other people later on. Pardon? That's domestication. Martin Luther King Jr. did not agree with the collective dream of the planet and said so. Okay? And so we've had these people. It's tough when we start to stand up and declare the truth of who we are because we're in this collective consciousness and don't wake me up. Don't mess with my dream. I want to stay here. I want to fit in. It's safer for me to fit in than it is for me to be my authentic self. But in the long run, it's not. In the long run, it's deeply painful and disappointing. So we use our word to direct the energy of love, happiness, and peace in our lives. That is the energy that we're using our word to direct. Do we direct it in a healthy way, or are we directing other energy in our lives? And that's a question you can ask yourself with anything you say. Am I using my word to direct love, peace, joy, happiness? Or am I using this word to direct something that is destructive and life destructive? Am I life affirming or life destructive? As we use our word this way, we become immune to negativity. Because we begin to condition the soil of our mind to only accept truth, love, the highest vibration. Anybody who's done gardening, there's basically soil in which some plants grow well and some plants don't. There's alkaline soil and acid soil. And the plants that do well in acid soil don't do well in alkaline soil and vice versa. And so what kind of soil we have in our mind, at birth, when we start, we're pretty much neutral. But we get conditioned to what's the usual thing that's put into our mind. If we grow up with parents who are pretty positive, pretty loving, and pretty affirming, that's what we're used to. That's why I try and do the work that we do with the youth here at our center, is we try and get them conditioned into that kind of consciousness so that even when they're exposed to other things, it bounces off. But if you're raised with parents who are unconscious, who don't know that, who through being themselves part of the collective dream of the planet, the dream of hell of the planet, if you will, then that's what we get exposed to and that's what we're used to. See, I grew up thinking that sarcasm was the proper way of communication all the time. Because guess what was in my house? And it wasn't until later that I found out that not everybody thought I was funny when I was being sarcastic. Dang. People didn't live that way. So our soil needs to be conditioned regularly. So this week, I'm going to invite you to do 3 things. Number 1, pay attention to your words. Internally, what you're saying to yourself, and externally, what you're putting out. Just pay attention. And especially the subtle little ones, the little quick, something happens and you make a quick pronouncement. Catch yourself, if you can, and see, is that energetic going where you want it to go, or is it not going where you don't want it to go? If it is going where you don't want it to go, change it. So am I speaking from self-love? Am I expressing love, peace, and happiness with my words, both internally and externally? Number 2, begin to become as impeccable with your word as you possibly can. As he says, it takes in the reading, it takes great courage, it takes a strong will in order to do this. But if you can begin to live your life with these agreements, the transformation in your life will be amazing. How many of you would like to have a transformation that's amazing in this direction in your life? Okay? And so it's, do we have the will to start becoming impeccable with our word? Nothing but truth and highest good passes my lips. Nothing but truth and the highest good passes my lips. What if you made an agreement with yourself that that's how you would speak for the rest of this week? Okay? You don't have to do it for the rest of your life, okay? For some people, it might be just for the next hour, okay? Or for this half a day or something like that. But what if it was nothing but truth and highest good passes my lips? I use my word to create what I want more of in my life. Because the truth is, you're already doing that. All we're doing is getting conscious of it and choosing what it is we want. And then finally, let love and truth in. See, sometimes if our soil is so negatively conditioned, we can't even let love and truth in when we hear it. We all know people that we can give them a compliment and they'll sit there and slough it off. We know people that you try and love them and they'll just push it away. So start to let love and truth in. I keep my soil conditioned with self-love, and I don't take part in gossip or criticism, either of others or myself. So that's my invitation for you this week. Pay attention to your words, become as impeccable as you can with your word, and let only love and truth in. Are you willing to do that? Yes. Can you play with that? It will truly shift your life. It will truly shift your life. I'm going to close with a quote from Don Miguel Ruiz from the book, The 4 Agreements. Be impeccable with your word. This is the first agreement that you should make if you want to be free, if you want to be happy, if you want to transcend the level of existence that is hell. It is very powerful. Use the word in the correct way. Use the word to share your love. Tell yourself how wonderful you are, how great you are. How many of you get up in the morning, look in the mirror, and say, "You are wonderful"? Okay? Most of us don't. A couple people do. A couple of us do. How many of us, if we have a partner, look at our partner and say, first thing in the morning, how wonderful you are? Or our children, how wonderful you are. First thing out. You want to improve your relationship? Look at your partner first thing in the morning and say, "You are wonderful. I'm so glad you're here." Most of the time, by the time we've been married for a bunch of years, we kind of forget about that, right? Sometimes we don't. Use the word to share your love. Tell yourself how wonderful you are, how great you are. Tell yourself how much you love yourself. Use the word to break all those teeny tiny agreements that make you suffer. Just imagine what you can create with impeccability of the word. With the impeccability of the word, you can transcend the dream of fear and live a different life. You can live in heaven in the middle of thousands of people living in hell because you are immune to that hell. You can attain the kingdom of heaven from this one agreement. Be impeccable with your word. Let's move into prayer. And so I know that there is, in fact, only one energy, only one life, and that life is a life of pure love. Every mystic who's ever touched that life has experienced that absolute pure love. That perfect divine order, that harmony, that freedom that is everywhere present. That is the truth of life. And we are one of that. We are individualized expressions of that life, and therefore we are naturally free. We are naturally love. We are naturally joy. We are naturally in perfect divine order, right exactly as we are this moment. In this moment, we are whole, perfect, and complete. It's not about our checkbook, our job, our relationship status, our body, our friends. It's not about our economy. It's not about anything else. We are in truth whole, perfect, and complete right here, right now, simply because we are one of the infinite presence of God. The infinite presence of that one mind. And so it is from this consciousness that I speak my word that we wake up to this fact. That we wake up to this truth, again, more fully than ever before, and that we use our word to apply this truth. That we live in an impeccability with our word. We use our word to build up, to affirm life, that capital L life, that life of love, that life of joy, that life of wisdom, that life of harmony, that life of order. We use our word to live in that and to build that in our life here on this planet. Because this planet is as much God as anywhere else. And so in gratitude for knowing this, in gratitude for becoming aware of this, in gratitude for this truth, I simply release this word into a law that expresses itself into form and expression and experience in our lives, the lives of each and every person who takes on this path. And we live lives that are transformed into lives of greater joy, love, heaven than we have ever experienced before. And it is done. And so it is. Thank you.
To love, serve.